These are essential words used in a natural disaster like the one happening right now in Brisbane, caused by Cyclone Alfred. If you have joined us now, this is part 3. I recommend that you start from part 1. The rain you see behind me is the rain that's been constant. The rain that you've seen behind me has been relentless, and it's the rain from the rain that you see behind me has been relentless and constant. The rain that you see behind me has been relentless and heavy. It is the rain from Cyclone Alfred. Here is the third passage describing and here's a short passage. Here is a short passage, passage 3, incorporating the last 9 words describing the Cyclone Alfred emergency. So altogether we will have had 25 words. As the storm finally moved away, reports showed a surge in emergency calls from residents across Brisbane and the Gold Coast asking for help with cleanup and damage assessment. Well, in truth, it hasn't moved away yet. It is still very much in the midst of it. Anyway, despite the cyclone's downgrade, I'm recording. Quickly say anything. I have to cut this off and edit it. It makes yeah, I know. Okay. Despite the cyclone's Despite the cyclone's downgrade, authorities continued to issue weather advisories, warning that some areas could still experience strong winds and isolated heavy showers. In the aftermath, the sandbagging efforts by the local communities had helped prevent even the worst. In the aftermath, the sandbagging efforts by local communities had helped prevent even worse damage to properties near the coastline, but many buildings still suffered damage. The region's critical infrastructure, including bridges, power lines, and water treatment plants, was severely impacted by the cyclone, making it difficult for essential services to operate. While the number of casualties remained low, emergency teams worked around the clock to assist the injured and ensure those trapped in dangerous areas could be evacuated. Brisbane preparedness for the storm, with plans in place for such emergencies, played a crucial role in keeping the overall damage to a minimum. As cleanup began, officials emphasized that recovery from such a powerful storm would take time, and that landslides in nearby hinterlands could further delay restoration efforts. However, the worst of the storm had passed, and the flood waters are receding, allowing emergency crews to reach isolated areas. Sadly, this is yet to be the case. Instead of receding, we are seeing flood waters rising. So this is certainly not over. Let's isolate and examine each of these 9 words in detail, still in the context of the emergency of Cyclone Alfred. Surge. A storm surge from Cyclone Alfred inundated parts of the Gold Coast, flooding beachfront properties. Brisbane's riverbanks were overwhelmed by a surge of flood waters, causing extensive damage to businesses along the waterfront. So the word surge means a sudden, Strong increase or rise, especially in numbers or intensity. Two other examples. There was a surge in online sales during the holiday shopping season. Another one, which was seen a few years ago during COVID. Hospitals reported a surge in COVID cases during the winter months. 18. Advisory. The Bureau of Meteorology issued a severe weather advisory for Brisbane, warning of heavy rains and damaging winds. Emergency services in northern New South Wales updated their advisory, urging residents to avoid all non-essential travel. So the word advisory is actually quite mild, quite neutral. The stronger word that is used in Brisbane is weather warning. The Bureau of Meteorology issued a severe weather warning. For the purposes of learning words, we will use advisory here because it is the word advisory is actually the word advisory means a formal recommendation, but more so in these situations, a formal warning, often related to safety or precaution. So the word warning instead of advisory is probably more urgent. Other examples of the use of this word: the travel agency issued an advisory about potential visa changes for tourists. The doctor gave an advisory on the risks of consuming too much sugar. 19. Sandbagging. Brisbane City Council provided free sandbags as residents rushed to protect their homes from rising waters. Volunteers on the Gold Coast assisted with sandbagging efforts to prevent flooding in vulnerable areas. So this word is mainly used in situation of flooding. However, the meaning of sandbagging in normal usage is very, very different. It is a metaphor for it is a metaphor for it is a metaphor for deliberately underperforming or downplaying one's abilities or intentions. So using this word in this context is very, very different. The examples I'll give you now will show you that. The politician was accused of sandbagging his opponent by downplaying his own strength. She was sandbagging in the poker game to pretending She was sandbagging in the poker game, pretending to have a weaker hand than she actually did. So she was bluffing in a sense. She was pretending to be weak, to be underperforming, to be downplaying, so that the other person is caught unaware. Infrastructure. Cyclone Alfred severely damaged key infrastructure in Brisbane, including bridges and public transport networks. For example, the bridge between Bribie Island and the mainland was damaged, such that the people living in the island had no more access by road to the mainland during the storm. Another example, Major infrastructure projects in northern New South Wales have to be delayed because of storm-related destruction. So infrastructure just means basic physical and organizational structures needed for the operation of a society. Example use: the government invested heavily in infrastructure, building new roads, bridges across the country. So infrastructure are roads, bridges, electricity supply, water, and so forth. Another example, the company's IT infrastructure was upgraded. No. Another example, the company's IT infrastructure was upgraded to handle increased traffic on its website. 21. Casualties. Emergency services confirmed several casualties in Brisbane, where floodwaters swept through residential streets. Example 2. Northern New South Wales authorities are assessing the number of casualties as search and rescue operations continue. So casualties means people who are injured or killed in an accident, disaster, or conflict. So you can have casualty in different situations such as these. The car accident resulted in multiple casualties, with several people being taken to hospital. A different example, the economic downturn caused heavy casualties in the job market, leading to widespread layoffs. So in this last sentence, casualties meant nothing. In the last example sentence, casualties here meant people who were affected, not injured, not killed, but people who were affected by the economic downturn. They may have lost jobs. Exactly that. They were laid off. They were fired, but laid off their work. Preparedness. So this is a rather long word. Preparedness. So it's 4-syllable. So here you have to pronounce when you here you have to pronounce all the vowels. Preparedness. Whereas the past tense of prepare is prepared, not prepared. Prepared. But for this word, it is preparedness. Preparedness. Example sentence. Brisbane's emergency preparedness helped reduce the number of lives lost, but the damage remains extensive. Communities along the Gold Coast praised the preparedness efforts of local councils in responding to the cyclone. So preparedness is the state of being ready and able to respond to a potential situation or disaster. The state of being ready, being prepared. So disaster preparedness training. So disaster preparedness training helps communities respond effectively to crisis. His level of preparedness for the job interview impressed the hiring company. 23. Landslide. Heavy rainfall triggered a landslide in the Gold Coast hinterland, cutting off access to remote properties. Landslide, as the word says, the land slid. The earth moved and slipped. Brisbane's western suburbs faced the risk of landslides after days of torrential rain saturated the ground. Heavy rain weakens the structures, weakens the earth, weakens. So here, landslide is defined as a sudden and dramatic slide of earth or rock down a slope. This is in the context of This is in the literal context of the land actually sliding, the earth actually moving and slipping down the slope. However, there's a second meaning which refers to a major victory or shift. The next two examples will illustrate this. The candidate won by a landslide, securing 80% of the total votes. That means in the election, the candidate won by a great margin, by a landslide. A second example, investors faced massive losses after the landslide decline in the stock market prices. Landslide decline means a big and sudden loss, a big and sudden fall in the stock market. 24. The word is receding. Flood waters in Brisbane are slowly receding, but many roads remain impassable due to the debris and damage. So the water levels are slowly receding. They are slowly going down. Authorities in northern New South Wales warn that while rivers are receding, the cleanup operation will take weeks. So receding actually means moving back, moving away. In terms of flood waters, receding means going down, getting lower. So moving back or moving away, especially in relation to water and physical feature. For example, moving back, moving away. My hairline is receding, meaning my hairline is going back. So I'm losing hair here, losing hair there. It's receding. Okay, better cover it. Okay. So example sentences are, the tide is receding, revealing shells and sea creatures along the shore. The tide is receding. So the ocean tide is going back, moving away from land. This is the sentence that I was just talking about. His hairline was noticeably receding, a sign of early baldness. Hopefully, I'm not getting bald. 25. Recovery. So, in the context of a natural disaster, this is how it is used. Unfortunately, it hasn't begun yet. The damage and the destruction is still going on in Brisbane, the Gold Coast, Southeast Queensland, and the Northeast New South Wales. But the example sentence here would be something like this. Brisbane has begun the recovery process, with emergency services assessing damage and restoring essential services. Recovery efforts in the Gold Coast and northern New South Wales are expected to take months following the widespread devastation. That's true. That's the reality. It will take months, sometimes even years, and the scar on people will remain for years and years to come. Recovery, that's the process of recovery, that's the process of returning to a normal or better state after a setback or injury. So we often use this word not in the context of natural disaster, but in this context of health. After injury, she focused on her recovery through physical therapy. Also, it is used to describe the health of the economy. The economy is showing signs of recovery after a prolonged recession. So these are the 25 words that we have gone through in this difficult time to describe a difficult situation that is occurring at this time right now. Despite the challenges and the difficulties that we face, we will recover, and Brisbane will recover, Brisbane will recover, and we will look forward to its recovery, and Brisbane will recover, and we will head towards the 2032 Olympics in no time. Let me know in the comments if you have been following the Brisbane Cyclone Alfred, and if you're in Brisbane or Gold Coast, New South Wales or Queensland, Southeast, Northeast, tell me what you have experienced.